at all. Now, conversely, though, we know exactly what Shannon's gameplay is like, at least in terms of what he was able to do, normal summon Alistair, but all of those new spell cards that we've seen, and all those great new fusion cards that came out in Chaos Origins, didn't get a chance to actually see him in this duel, but it should theoretically give Shannon the ability to just shut his opponent down, but he just didn't see any of them, so he really needed more starters, more spells, not necessarily the pieces of interaction, so it's always been kind of difficult when you're building an Alistair-based deck. There's more cards now, so it could be a very pure build. But back in the day, I mean, you had to mix it with something because there just weren't enough cards to play. But we'll see if there is a change here. Shannon gets a chance to go first.
Yeah, the Invoke deck that comes to mind more recently was the Invoke Shaddoll Destiny Hero-based strategy. That one was obviously quite popular, but these duelists have finished side decking. They're shuffled up. The hands have been drawn. They're just getting the okay to start. I really hope we are able to see a little bit more from Shannon in terms of the invoked cards, whether that's Hyper Invoked Aeon, Invoked Oceanus. I mean, there's a few different pieces there in the extra deck that are brand new. There's some cards that help you sort of build up resources. Invoked Bay Baron, and obviously Invoked Sarath. So many differing pieces as you construct your fusion summons. So I'm really hoping to see a little bit more, whether it's of the new fusion cards or the new fusions themselves, so we can really showcase the Invoke strategy.
Well, I think we're about to do just that. Not a bad hand at all. Some interesting choices here, but it looks like we're going to do a special summon.
That resolves.
Radiant Typhoon time, so actually get to switch the deck.
Hey, man, I'm just trying to survive these Platoon streets.
I got you, man. I got you. Yes. You are good.
Love the energy of these two duelists. I mean, it's a long grind.
So their Eldom now will allow him to special summon out a copy of Swen. So you do note that in the deck type, it notes Radiant Typhoon Invoked. So there is a small Radiant Typhoon package. So he is incorporating these wind monsters in his deck. And, you know, having a variety of attributes can be beneficial.
That's fine.
Sarath, for instance, can work with an Alistair monster and a wind monster. Unfortunately, though, here, Shannon has been met by a copy of Fuwalos. So now the question is, can he establish enough interaction and not summon too many times from the extra deck?
We're going for the Magical Meltdown here. Allows us to get access to Alistair the Invoked the old-fashioned way.
And that's exactly what Shannon's going to do. He also has a protection now, very similar to that of Branded Lost. But we see Alistair the Invoker come down. That would be met with Ash Blossom.
Just never going to get access to that card, or...
It does look like Shannon has one of the new cards from Chaos Origins, though. It looks like he's holding a copy of Sacred Spirit Sword Awa. So this has 3 different effects, and it looks like the one that he's going to do is the first one written on the card, which is to special summon Awa's Divine Spirit of the Law from his deck or graveyard. That's the one that he's choosing to do. Alternatively, maybe in another game state, he might take an Alistair monster and send it to the graveyard or banish it. Or alternatively, look at 3 random face-down cards in the opponent's extra deck and banish one of them. But here he's using this. This is one of the reasons why Invoked has seen a rise in popularity, and obviously we spoke about its success over in the EU this weekend. Sacred Spirit Sword Awas increases this deck's consistency because it can serve as a starter. Why, might you ask? Well, now he's combined that with, as the card states, Awas Divine Spirit of the Law. You can banish it from the hand or the field, and obviously here it's been placed on the field, special summon through Spirit Sword, and he can banish it from the field in order to add an Alistair monster from the deck to the hand. Then he can conduct an additional normal summon. So in that previous game where we saw one normal summon shut down and just simply end a turn, in theory, Invoke now has the tools to play through an interruption on a normal summon.
I use effect on board, I can gain an additional normal summon of said Alistair monster.
So we are going to go ahead and banish it to gain the additional normal summon of an Alistair-based monster. And now there's multiples of those. It's not just Alistair the Invoker himself. Doesn't seem like we're going to stop that. So Shannon reaches deep into the deck here to grab the next monster in the Alistair puzzle. Still kind of thinking back and forth though between the 2 of those.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and add Alistair.
Yeah, he will certainly be searching out a brand new Alistair the Reminiscence. Now, again, he's going to conduct an additional normal summon, but this would be a card that he could, if he needed to, special summon as well.
Well, he has been trying to fusion summon this entire duel. Maybe we'll finally get to see him do it now.
So it's a little bit of an interesting method of fueling the invocation package here when it is normal or special. Then, of course, in this situation, it's normal or flip face up.
I mean,
which
currently?
could theoretically
I have
happen.
4
He's
cards
actually
in my
going to banish an Invoke monster from his extra deck. That's going to allow him to add the old classic Invocation or a spell that mentions it. Well, talking about new spells that mention Invocation, here is that quick play, as we commented on at the onset of this match.
Get it, sword.
Invocation Sword.
I did.
I really love Invocation Sword so much because it just does something very different. It almost feels like Alistair has cracked the code to alchemy as he uses different ways to fusion summon.
Yep, as we said earlier, he's actually going to be able to return cards from banishment to the graveyard as as material. So you might say, what's the benefit of banishing that Invoke Raiden? Well, in order to fuel the banish pile, Invoke Alistair the Reminiscent can actually do so in searching out that sword.
And I think, the Invoked Raijin is such a really good monster to be using this format because when you special summon at the right time, you actually could use it to maybe stuff your opponent's combos involving Radiant Typhoon, perhaps by, not Radiant Typhoon, Killer Tune, in order to go ahead and flip those monsters face down to prevent any synchro summons. So it's one of those things where you want to make sure that you've got multiple outs to different things in the format. It also targets, which is really huge too. So interesting. I see how he got this far in the tournament.
Say it again?
Very cool.
And now we finally get to see
you had yours
Radiant Typhoon Vision.
No. You're good. Okay.
Here he adds 2 fresh cards. Looks like a copy of the original Invocation and a copy of the original Invocation. He'll now discard Mystical Space Typhoon. Now, Mystical Space Typhoon might seem like an engine requirement, but against a card, a deck that utilizes continuous traps and spells, there is the possibility that there's some value, depending on the situation, especially when you're going first.
No, let's you destroy the Elfnote Welcome Home, the Elfnote Rhapsodian Madness.
Exactly.
In this matchup, it's actually really important. I think generally into the field, you can use it for things like, JJ Cool Tune or maybe against Mind Shuffle. But in this particular matchup, the very accessible spell and trap removal is going to be very important.
Now, obviously, for those of you who are familiar with Radiant Typhoon Mandate has hit the field in combination with
Overlay.
Oh, wow. Actually going into Dagaris the Timeless here. Wonder which of the effects we're going to use. Going to draw 2 and discard 1, so reaching even deeper into the deck.
Judge.
in combination with
Are we allowed to put a dice on the deck? Okay.
I'm not going to forget.
Trying to use dice to keep track of the mandatory card effect. Don't worry, we got multiple judges' eyes, and Shannon said, I ain't going to forget.
Discard. I will discard the AWAS.
So we're going to discard another AWAS here.
Yes, you're good.
And
I'm worried it's going to be this
pretty
again.
sizable hand. Again, just like you said, we were hoping we got to see it. We're not cheering for any particular duelist here, but we are cheering for just generally duels. And so now we get to see the invocation slap down. Let's see what we fuse.
Yeah, this has been a good illustration of exactly what the Invoke deck is trying to accomplish. And in addition to that, we have Mandate on the field. So we might be able to see what Radiant Typhoon was doing, perhaps, say, a few months ago in combination with this. So this is an interesting take on the strategy, but he is going to go into another one of the new, or this actually might be the first new fusion monster of the match. This is Sarath. So this is the one that I commented on earlier, can work well with wind monsters, but otherwise it would take an Alistair monster and a fire or wind. He is going to be able to special summon out of the graveyard a level 6 or lower monster, either graveyard, and that is in fact a quick effect. Its effects unfortunately are going to be negated, but this is one of the ways that you can potentially climb into cards like Cross Sheep, for instance, which is always lined up really well with fusion-based strategies. The extra monster zone is obviously being occupied right now, but that is something that had we not gone into the Radiant Typhoon package, we easily could.
The window of me summoning the.
Oh, I can't respond anyway.
You can't respond.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
My bad.
I didn't know if you were actually thinking, if you were reading, if you were actually thinking about responding.
Shannon clarifying, honestly, a question that wasn't being asked, which is, I'm doing all of this in a resolution window, and my Magical Meltdown is providing me protection, so I'm not sure if you're thinking about activating a card, but I'm going to save you the risk of showing me a card that I really shouldn't see in an attempt to activate a card during a window of time in which, again, as I mentioned, Magical Meltdown, very similar to that of Branded Lost from the Branded strategies. If you've played against that card, you know how frustrating it can be when your opponent's like, no, you can't just do anything right now. Let me continue.
And it also kind of saves some time, too, because if Kazuma just knows, hey, you can't do anything, he just kind of hangs back and we just kind of continue.
So here we have Alistair, the Invoker of Madness. As I said, Sarath very easily can serve as the function of getting 2 monsters on the field, whether that's to summon Cross Sheep or, in this instance, to summon Alistair, the Invoker of Madness.
A lot of nice historic cards here again, just so much from the last 10 years of Yu-Gi-Oh! But Alistair has always been like that, always trying to gain advantage by using different attributes and monsters. So you do try to include a lot of interesting cards just to make sure that you hit it all. And speaking of chain links, looks like we're not going to respond anyway, so back into the deck we go.
Yeah, he was using Sarath's graveyard effect. So Sarath not only lets you climb, it also can serve as the effect that puts a monster into a zone that Crush points to, because you can banish it from the graveyard and fusion summon an invoked monster. That's why we see now hit the field the brand new Bay Baron. That's going to allow him to search out a copy of Brikram, the Divine Spirit of Artifice. That's now hit the field. Now, Artifice is an interesting effect in the sense that sometimes similar effects function a little bit differently than this one. What this is going to allow him to do is get a little bit of protection, because he would be able to banish it, only though when you control it. Sometimes there are effects that are similar to this that work in hand, but it's only if it's on the field. And if you do, you're able to negate the activation of an effect that's been activated in response to a fusion monster. So a little bit of insulation. It is something otherwise, though, if you control an Alistair monster or have one in the graveyard that you can just freely summon. And then in doing so, you are able to set an invocation. So if you are in the midst of getting your engine going, you can add a little bit of insulation by also searching out an invocation card, though, adding a quick play specifically that will allow you to play on your opponent's turn.
And speaking of quick plays, the Invocation Sword's being activated, the SP Little Knight being used to banish the Babaron, but now that makes the Hyper Invoked out. I finally get to see it on stream here. We're going to go ahead and get rid of 3 monsters from the extra deck. Dealer's Choice, goodbye Seraphim, goodbye Elfnote, June Pride, and what else do we not like? Maybe the FA Dawn Dragster is a pretty...
they're all 6s, right?
Pretty accessible choice, because you want to activate your spells and traps. Maybe you're not worried about anything else other than the quote-unquote free negate that you would get from the Dawn Dragster.
That's an interesting choice. I wonder, sometimes there's cards that could surprise you out of nowhere. Like, if you don't have a good way of dealing with Chaos Angel, which we just saw, if you don't have a good way of dealing with Psychic End Punisher, that could be another card. He elects instead to go to Black Rose Dragon, a classic. That is one way to ensure your field is safe, is to ensure your opponent no longer has access to Black Rose Dragon.
But it's also interesting, too, because he banished monsters of different attributes. So if he has another Invocation Sword, you can use both banishments for your fusion material, so it actually may benefit him.
Absolutely, and then again, it only returns it back to the graveyard, which means then you can use your Invocation. It doesn't go back to the extra deck. It's not an effect that returns back to the extra deck. So when you banish that with the Hyper Invoked, that means it's going to be banished, in theory, permanently. There are ways, obviously, in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! To get cards from banishment back to your extra deck, but that's not something that all strategies have access to.
Whale, if it isn't invoked Oceanias. I know there's a lot of players who are worried about this, but remember, it's only getting that Dimension Shifter-like effect there.
I think the printing there, it's very similar to Oceanus. I think that's Elysium, which is an older one.
Right.
Yeah, that's upside down relative to our perspective.
Yeah, my bad.
A few cards I can build.
You can definitely build that. All right. That leads me.
Guess I'm still trying to hunt my white whale then.
Yep.
Yeah. Elysium is a quick effect. Essentially, what it'll be able to do is target an invoke monster he controls or in his graveyard and banish it, and then all monsters the opponent controls with that attribute as well. So it is an interaction form of interruption. If he is able to summon Oceanus, the extra monster zones are clear right now, so he would be able to apply essentially that macrocosmos effect, and you can see very quickly, there it is, right?
I mean, they're not quite as similar as I remember, but, when they're upside down, it is a little bit difficult. But this is the one that a lot of duelists were worried about coming into, this tournament fighting against, of course, because in the extra monster zone, any card sent to your opponent's graveyard is banished instead, which that's exactly what Shannon wants with an Invocation Sword to go and return those to the graveyard. So, Dimension Shifter effect, but still filling up the gas in the tank for future fusions.
Take a look what I got left in here.
Yeah.
Very good thing to do. What are the 12 cards that I do have left that I need to try to play with?
I suppose I will start it with...
I mean, one thing to note is this was done under the effect of a Mulch Army, so Kazuma does have a lot of cards at his disposal. The problem, though, is he doesn't necessarily have an extra deck that's conducive to the situation, because he has to play through multiple points of interaction without the full utility of his Elfnote engine. But he'll start with a really good one. You'd have to imagine he'd have a starter with that many cards in hand, but he's going to go with Lucina, special summon to the main Monster Center zone.
Back to search.
Yes, good.
Now we'll be able to add an Elfnote monster.
So many cards on the field. It's not like Shannon would need an additional one, which is why I hope he doesn't forget that promise he made that he's going to remember not to draw a card next turn off of the effect of the Dugares. But Looks like we are going to go ahead and add on the Elfnote Lucina. It's going to be an Elfnote Regina. So still trying, not just
And
going to
it has
scoop
to
this
attack
one up, going to try to actually win this
that's,
duel and close things out in
down
this
here.
15th
Oh,
round.
okay.
of
Here,
chess.
it's just
Yeah, there's
the
multiple ways of
Okay.
basically filtering Lucina into two bodies. You can get Regina, which then will special summon from the deck.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
saves your normal summon. You could also just search out, for instance, Elfnote Power Patron, and then use your normal summon
You added
there.
Regina, right?
That's correct.
So second, it looks like he actually has.
And does that
Elfnote
banish
Power
cards on my
Patron
field or
in
your
here.
cards? Your cards too. Just your
With
the Elysium.
what do you mean?
Let me see.
Yeah, go for it.
Just quickly checking, Alicia. What the question I think
Okay, got it.
was if you were to use that effect, does it banish all monsters on the field or just all monsters I control? And unfortunately, the answer is that it's only going to be the Elfnote
I will.
accompanying monsters. It's not a complete board wipe. It's a Regeki, then a Dark Hole.
Kazuma considering his options. That's it. Okay, Shannon back on the board here. 1-1. We got a real match. Kazuma
Not
will get a
involved
chance
myself.
to
Once you
go
draw, I was like, oh yeah, nice.
first next duel, but Shannon's smiling.
have
He kept
no
his promise,
understanding
right?
of
He didn't draw.
I know, right? I was
Actually,
somewhat disappointed after game one because
what?
we were talking
I
up
should've
how
really
Invoked
I should have found
earned
spot really
a
early or something.
world invitation
Major
in the
really
point
late,
playoff over in Europe this weekend. That same duelist then brought it all the way to the top 8. How could that be?
almighty
After the first game, you might be questioning that.
Yeah.
That's how it
Pretty
is. 3 extra reps. The reminiscent effect of that of Macro Cosmos established on the field. He had Invocation Sword Set, Elysium on the field, SP Little Knight, Mandate. I mean, that board was very formidable. And even if that board was played through, right? Even if there was the ability to navigate through that board, you don't have your extra deck as intended. And it was the opponent that got to